Good day and welcome to this masterclass on acrobatic rolling. This class is not only for beginners, it's also for intermediate and more experienced practitioners. By the end of this class, you will not only leave with a proper understanding on how you can practice rolling further, but also hopefully with plenty of ideas and inspiration how to integrate all of this into your practice. My name is Neil and I am a connoisseur of the acrobatic world, especially rolling and everything that rolling has to offer. Actually, this follow-along class is an addition to my recently posted The Art of Acrobatic Rolling video, in which I break down rolls in a more artistic manner. If you haven't seen this one, check it out by clicking up there. But without any further ado, let's directly jump into this masterclass, in which I want to show you a couple very practical tips on how to include rolling into your own practice. From breaking down a basic roll to showing rolling variations, and even ways of integrating rolling in a more free-flowing manner.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
I think there is no better place to practice rolling indoors than an Aikido dojo. Aikido, the way of the harmonious spirit, which already is a beautiful name and already something we can take as inspiration for rolling. In Aikido, there is in practice always two opposing parts. Nage is the one who does all of the throwing techniques, and Uke is the one who is approaching and then reacting to the techniques and usually guide them into the floor. The way of the Uke is also called Ukemi, which can be roughly translated as the art of falling in a way. Something beautiful that I already find in this concept of Ukemi is that oftentimes it is spoken of receiving the floor instead of slamming into the floor, instead of going into the floor with fear, which usually happens, especially in beginners, is I want to receive the floor, kind of like as a friend. So already having this idea in mind will elevate our practice, hopefully, make it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more sensitive. Let us start this class on the floor. Already as a warm-up, we can integrate this idea of rolling. Okay, so usually if we're not used to it, our body doesn't seem like it can be a proper ball. A ball is perfect in rolling, okay? It can go in any and all directions, and this is kind of the idea that we also want to achieve in our bodies. But because at first it's quite uncommon to roll, let's explore how we can already find small rolls as part of a warm-up. And what I like to do is I like to start with my hands on the floor and already here explore this idea of a rolling point. So instead of just warming your wrist up like this, you can already try to find certain rolling mechanisms and trying to roll across your hands from the fingers all the way, curling your fingers in onto your fists. And already here you can find plenty of sensations of I can actually roll over my wrists, I can roll over my fingers, right? And from here we can also do exactly the same thing on our forearms, rolling back and forth. And here we now have a different aspect of rolling, whereas in the wrist there is many possibilities. On the forearm it's mostly about like a cylinder rolling back and forth. And we can already start to combine all of these things. So rolling over the hands, making your way onto your forearms. And then even here we have the very first task in rolling, which is this idea of a folding mechanism. So anytime we want to enter the floor, we somehow need to, like origami, fold ourselves into the floor. And one way to practice this is already here. How can we now go from our hands rolling onto our forearms and then finding a contact with our shoulder on the floor without bumping into the floor? So really making sure to use all of these small rolls so we can slowly fold ourselves in and out of the floor. You can of course pivot and roll also onto your elbow. Maybe this is helpful so you can fulfill this task. And simply go from one side to the other, finding continuously these rolling motions. Now, can we, when on top of the shoulder, also try to load our shoulder a little bit? Okay, so now really fully sink on top of your shoulder. Use the head as a little support, use the other arm as a support, and try to already find a little bit of push on top of your shoulder. Coming up and once again folding into the floor, same thing on the other side. What about lifting one arm? So now I'm only supporting on my shoulder, my head is resting on the floor, I have my leg on the floor and my arm. Folding myself up, finding a different entry on the other side into the floor. Lifting my arm and seeing how I can balance. Every time you're falling down, no big deal. Try to make it as smooth as you can, so to already integrate this idea of rolling. Wonderful. Let's give our arms, upper body a little bit of rest and try to find the same thing now in our lower body. So sitting on my legs, in Aikido, for example, you would call it the seiza position. And from here you can already try to find the same idea of rolling across your legs from side to side. Maybe even so far that you can already sit on the floor, rolling, using your hands as well. We can already open up this idea of rolling and use a couple different pathways. So we can also go from our shin sit on top of our feet without actually lifting our feet, but really finding these rolling motions again, okay? And all of this will be quite helpful later when we do our rolls and get back up onto our feet. So how can I now shift my weight in between both of my legs and maybe even sitting on the floor? If you need your hands, of course you can use them, but maybe you can figure out this task without actually using your hands. And already here we have this rolling of the lower body, okay? Boom, this task is also great to already massage our lower body, our bum, our feet, and already get us closer to the floor, more ball-like, hey? Right from here, now we have our upper body, we have the lower body. Let's work a little bit with our center, our spine, which is actually a main mechanism, a main player in rolling, of course. So when you envision a roll, surely there is a moment of catching yourself with the arms, but then the roll happens on your torso, where you go from one shoulder, rolling onto your bum and then standing up. So having all of these rounding motions, we can also call them flexion of the spine, okay? In all sorts of ways, we can already try to ball up our spine. Again, this idea is to create this ball-like human being, so we can roll into any and all directions. So what we can do now is, at first using only strength, can I now go into the floor without using my hands, rolling my spine, kind of like melting into the floor, vertebra by vertebra, and then rolling back out again. Up. You don't need to always be in the same position. You can already explore various pathways. Now, if this is not possible to you, feel free, once again, to use your hands to kind of go into the floor, rolling into the floor, helping yourself to go out. But constantly having this idea in mind of how can I receive the floor now with my spine. Bending, rolling, melting, and rolling back up again. As the seconds pass, We can also try to now slowly include the explorations from before, so rolling on top of our lower body, finding entries onto our back, and maybe even finding an entry on top of the shoulder, like we did before. So now we have this beautiful little dance, a rolling dance, that is still kind of a warm-up, but already teaches us quite a lot. Right, wonderful. Let's stand up and take a couple steps. Find a nice breathing. Down, regulate your body, your arousal by breathing easily through your nose. Already try to sense how your body is feeling. Usually it should be quite nicely warmed up by now, so we can slowly start actually going into more technical ideas of rolling. Okay, the first step of figuring out our rolls is actually not by starting with the entry into the roll, but with the exit. So we can already know what to do after a roll is happening, okay? And this task starts sitting on the floor. So in gymnastics, your roll would be usually from both shoulders onto both of your bum cheeks. So really a straight roll, something like this, okay? And while this is cool and useful in gymnastics, in most other disciplines, rolls don't happen in a straight line, but they happen in a diagonal line. So from one shoulder diagonally towards the opposite hip. Okay, so already now in this very first task, let's try to find more of a diagonal pathway in our rolls. So what I want you to do is shift the weight over to one side. Now for me it's the left side. I'm sitting on my left bum and I can now use my left hand in order to roll back onto my right shoulder, up my left bum again. So it's really going over this diagonal. And my legs act as a means to lever me into my roll and back to the floor again. Something just like that. Let's give it a couple more tries and then change towards the other side. Now you don't need to already go super high on top of your shoulder. Something like this, although you could. Try to limit the neck breaker position, but really shoot your legs upwards towards the sky so you can use the weight of them while going down to go for the roll. Let's go towards the other side and I will give you a different angle. So diagonal, and as you can maybe see here, there is this spiraling motion of my legs, my lower body, to really find this diagonal pathway. Boom, wonderful. Alrighty, now let's take a look on how we can use this momentum that we have generated through this back and forth motion to then get back up the floor into standing. So there's various ways of standing up and I will just now show a couple of them and we try to use them in a free-flowing manner and you can see for yourself which one is your favorite, which one comes most natural to you, which you then can use for the entire class. So one way is that, and we're talking now about this left bum, right shoulder motion, okay? One way of standing up is by curling in your left leg and rolling onto your shin and the arch of your foot in order then to go into this lunge. And from here you can simply stand up. Okay, we can also use the same thing to go back into the floor again. So if we put it together, we have a little roll over our shin, standing up. Shin guiding floor and standing back up. So this is one way of doing that. A second way that I want to show is, instead of doing this motion, now I'm trying to curl in my right leg and shoot out my left leg towards the side. Okay, we're still in the same diagonal. I'm sitting here on my left bum, right leg is curled in, and now I can try to lift off by pushing with my left arm into the floor and kind of curling myself onto that forward leg in order to get up, right? I can of course also reverse it. This is kind of the motion. Takes a little bit more strength, a little bit more mobility, but maybe you can find it. This is a very nice way for me to continue later because it offers a lot of continuity in a more free-flowing way. So, same diagonal roll, shooting, pressing. Okay, now let's also practice on the other side. Let's go for about 5 repetitions for our shin entry and then 5 repetitions for our leg shoot out entry. Okay, diagonal rolling now from right bum, left shoulder, shin and up. And now for the shootout and up. Sorry, false side. I'm going back. Shooting out. Left shoulder, right bum cheek. Wonderful. Once again, taking a couple breathers. If you feel like you want to refine this, simply stop the video and try to do it a couple more times, rolling backwards, forwards, and using any of these 2 variations to come up again. But if we want to continue, then let's do it now with a little exploration idea. So the task is rather simple. We're simply walking, and every once in a while you try to find an entry into the floor, something that works for you. You then want to take a roll, use the momentum to get back into standing. Okay? It should be a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more explorative. You don't need to think so much about the perfect technique. Make it work so that you can easily fulfill the task of somehow going into the floor and back up to standing. Okay, it doesn't need to be now super attached to the techniques that we did, but maybe you will find also a combination where you can kind of go circular and now you have a different pathway up to standing. Okay, so really just the idea is, how can we use our legs to step into the floor, and how can we use the momentum in our legs to then go back to standing. Wonderful. Let's take a breather. Let's walk it out and slowly letting go of this task for now, so we can go into a different one. So now we had this idea of how can we go from a roll back into standing. Now the task is how can we actually go into a roll. An issue arises especially in newcomers to acrobatics and rolling that when we're standing tall, the floor is quite far away. And going into a roll feels very, very scary because, let's face it, probably the last time that you as a newcomer have done a forwards roll was as a kid, a little roly-poly or something. So instead of starting and standing, what we can actually do is go all the way down into the floor, back into our seiza position, so sitting on both of our knees with our feet extended outwards. So once again, like we did in the warm-up, think about this idea of human origami, folding yourself into the floor, so we can actually enter our shoulder in a very easygoing, very low strength way. So what I propose to do is already think about a diamond, okay? I can lift both of my hands up, and between my index fingers and my thumbs there can be a little diamond. This is a great way to start out with the rolling. So if I want to go onto my right shoulder, I will place my hands forwards and then more towards the left side. This is so I now create a lot of space on the right side where I can easily fold my shoulder into the floor. Think about this rolling mechanism from your hands onto the blade of your hand, then folding your lower arm, your forearm, into the floor. Now I want to fold slowly more and more. It costs a little bit strength, okay? On top of my shoulder. Now what happens now is that your head needs to peel more and more around yourself so we can actually fulfill a roll. So I'm placing my hands, I'm folding into myself, finding my shoulder. Now I lift my leg, now I try to, this is the motion right here. I'm peeling my head into myself, and now I push away with my leg to make my first roll. Okay, let's go from one side to the other side, alternating both sides. Of course, one will be easier, but this is fully okay and fully normal. Trying to find your first rolls. Placing your hands, folding, shoulder, lift, head, in, and push over. Let's give it a couple tries, and then I will show a couple common things that newcomers will do that will hinder them from rolling. If you feel you're having a very hard time, keep at it for a while, and then later we go into more refinements. All right, let's give it a little break so I can show a couple examples what could go wrong and how to fix that. So one of the things that I'm seeing quite a lot is that people tend to place their hands, their shock absorbers, a little bit too close close towards the body, and this will give a very condensed roll, okay? So when I sit here and I place my hands very close towards my body, I really have to curl in here, and that feels very uncomfortable. So what I would suggest is already here searching for length forwards, okay? This might feel scary at first, but it will actually enable you to do a proper roll later on. So already more towards the front. Then the second thing is, a lot of people, especially in the start, will find the floor, lift on top of the shoulder, but then fall towards the side. And the reason for that is the lack of head peel in, the lack of push diagonally forwards where the roll should happen. Okay, I'm first placing my hands a little bit further away, folding into the floor. Now, instead of directly thinking about evading the roll. I want to push higher. I want to peel my head in, and now I really want to push forwards. So there is a lot of intention of me trying to go forwards, forwards, forwards. Placing further away. Peeling into the floor. On top, really peeling the head in, using my elbow here also as a means to not fall towards the side. And then shooting myself over the roll. If you're interested in the subjects of acrobatics, rolling, falling, using your body in a very free-flowing manner, then my Finding Flow online programs could really help you to find more depth in these practices. From the Finding Flow Basics to the Finding Flow Integrations program, they are perfect for beginners. And then I have the big Acrobatics Lab online program. It's my big program where we really go into depth and find a lot of very advanced ideas and concepts around the topics of acrobatics, rolling, falling, so on and so forth. If you come through my YouTube videos, as always, you can use the code YouTube10 in order to get a 10% discount. You can check everything out on www.neilteisner.shop. So yeah, if you enjoy this practice, you can support my work by purchasing one of the online programs and elevating your practice. Okay, let's continue. The rolls from the floor should be quite okay for you right now. You should be able to do them. If not, keep on practicing and only then come back to the video. So what we can do now, instead of starting very low, we can go or try to go for a roll in a low lunge position. What is cool in this low lunge is that we can already take it fully into the floor, okay, to make it a little bit easier at first. My rule at first is that if your right leg is in front, we also will roll over the right shoulder. Whereas if your left leg is in the front, we will go over the left shoulder. So I will start with my right leg. Now the first step is thinking about going forwards. I'm not thinking about going into myself, like we talked about before. We don't want to make it to compress the roll, but I want to go forwards. Now from here, I receive the floor very gently. I receive the floor with my knee, and now I go for the roll that we already did before, but directly finding an exit and taking it into standing. So from standing, finding my lunge, receiving the floor, folding down, and go all the way back into standing. How can we now do exactly the same thing, but without touching the knee on the floor? And if we manage to do this step, we actually already have a beautiful forwards roll that we can already start to alter a little bit and finding cool little acrobatic variations. So the idea now is, when going for the floor, I receive the floor, and now the next step is lowering down, but without touching the knee to the floor, okay? What I see in beginners that they tend to stay super high, and then they kind of throw themselves into a roll, which very often leads to a very dynamic, very powerful roll, but also leads to slamming on the ground. In order to avoid that, what I think about in my roll is I will find my roll. Before going over myself, I make myself small. I go actually down, also with my foot. My whole body goes down into length, and only then I push. So there is a big difference staying very high and going, which is possible, but a little harder, and going very low, crouching tiger. and then going. So let's try to do this for a couple repetitions on both sides, figuring out an entry without using the knee. And if you can already do that, try to make it just a little bit more dynamic, walking around in circles and spirals, finding entries into the floor, directly out of the floor, and continuing like a pen that does not stop to write. There is endless versions, but I just want to give a couple ideas, and you can simply figure out if you can already do them or should practice more with the basic ideas. So the first idea is, when going with the right leg forwards, instead of finding the right shoulder, can we also cross the body and go for the left shoulder, okay? Really be careful in this one and try to really stick your head away to create a lot of space over your shoulder. It's not this forward roll, it's really this diagonal roll. So I'm going, I'm turning, and now I have this beautiful crossed roll. Left leg, right shoulder, and continuing. And this is super nice because now you can use this in order to go into a very circular roll. Another idea is, how can we actually now integrate a cartwheel and a roll? So to go into this idea of falling acrobatics, this is what I like to call it, combining acrobatic forms with a fall or a roll to create something beautiful. So the idea that I have is, how can we combine now a cartwheel and then a roll? And the proposition that I have for you is cartwheel at first, landing, continuing into this direction, and then going for this diagonal roll that we've just figured out. So it's a continuation, going with the momentum and then taking it into the floor. And then we got a last one, which actually is kind of like a one-arm roll, but in a more easier way. So this one doesn't use the folding mechanism that we have worked on before, the diamond one, but it's kind of thinking about your arm as a scythe. Okay, and the scythe is very round, and you can use this to kind of cut the floor. We can start once again very low. I will cut the floor and transform this into my roll. And this is something that is being used in martial arts more. Later in standing, you can really use it to kind of fall into the floor a little bit more, and this one feels really great. Cutting the floor, keeping more pressure on your arm in order to then transform this into a roll. We have the basic roll. We have diagonal rolls, we have cartwheel rolls, and now we also have this scythe roll, okay? For the last exploration of this masterclass, what we can try to do is simply play a song of about 3 minutes and explore all of these ideas. What I like to think about when moving is finding continuous pathways between one roll and the other. And in between, you can simply walk, but you can also stay on the floor and simply crawl around the floor, finding different ways to connect one roll to the next one. If you want to dare more, try to think more about falling, catching yourself, finding more momentum, catching yourself. No big rules, just ideas in order now to explore fully with the idea of rolling. Enjoy. Let's take it slowly down. Bring your exploration to an end. To finish this one, simply sit back in our Caesar position. Take a couple breathers together with me. Noting how your body is feeling right now. Probably a little tired, maybe a little bruised up, which is okay. A lot of information in this masterclass. Rolling breakdowns, warm-ups, the idea of falling, idea of catching yourself, folding yourself into the floor, variations of a roll and explorations. So lots of tools that you can use in your practice, okay? Once again, key detail for rolls or any other more complex movement pattern, it takes time, so allow yourself some time to figure out these pathways. Don't rush it, don't hurry. It could take months or even a couple years for you to really figure out the basics of rolling, so you can make them super fluid and super beautiful. And well, that was it for this class. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, let me know in the comments if you like this class. What did you learn in this class here? What would you like to see in the future? And also make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to check out all of the videos that I've already uploaded, many more to come. I am uploading very regularly on this channel, so if you appreciated this one, stick around, much more will come. That's it for now. Happy practice. Ciao, ciao. My wish for you after having watched this video would be that even just the tiniest spark of curiosity for this art of defying gravity will smolder on inside of you and eventually ignite a fire that will carry you through the unknown. Study deeper with my Finding Flow online programs, only on neilteisner.shop.